Hello all, here's a quick guide on how to program a robot using Java. So we're going to walk you through how to use Java to program a robot for FRC usage, and here's a quick table of contents and what to expect. So our team 1257 has a GitHub training website for future reference, so a link and QR code is posted on stream. If you want to check it out further, it is a great resource to do so with. So let's begin with what is Java. So Java is a programming language, and it was released in 1995, and it's object-oriented. So being object-oriented means that you create classes within the programming language, and then from those classes you make objects which you use later in the code. So classes are like blueprints for a car, and the objects would be like the specific car. So like a Mercedes-Benz, a Toyota, a Chevrolet, a Honda, they're all cars, like how a square is a rectangle. So it's like the blueprint analogy. So it's similar to other programming languages like C++, C#, and Python. So like for something with like Python and Java, their structure is very different, but they still are both object-oriented. So you can't just use Java on its own to program a robot, because you need a lot of custom commands and stuff to interface with like your motors. But if we use alongside WPIlib, which is the main library, then you're able to program a robot. So to program Java, you can use Replit as an IDE or use that to write your code, but you can also use VS Code on Windows, which I personally find is a lot easier. So here is an example program. See, we are creating a class, and within that class we have a single method, which when we execute the code, it'll run this method and run the command system.out.println hello world. So this will just print out hello world to the console. So variables. Variables are very important in Java because you have to put all your values inside of them. Say I have the speed of a motor and I want to use the speed of a motor in some sort of check. Then I have to store that speed of the motor in a variable. It's like a bucket. So you see, to define a variable, you have to put its type, then its name, then its value. If you want to reassign the variable or set it to a different value, you don't have to put in the type again, because if you put in the type, you're creating a new variable. But if you just want to reassign a variable, you just say the name is equal to the new value. So Java has two types of variables. We have primitives and we have object variables. So object variables, you have to create classes for, like the string, we'll get to that later. Enums are like custom data types, but usually you'd be using primitives, and the different types of primitives are the Boolean, which stores the true or false, a char, which stores a character, an int, which stores an integer, longs are bigger integers, and doubles are decimals, and floats are less accurate decimals. You will primarily be using ints, doubles, and Booleans in robotics code. So strings are used to store like text, and these are objects because you have to create a string object and then set it to a variable. It's slightly different than a primitive. Primitives you don't create objects for. So when creating a string, you just say string and then the name, and then after you put in the value, you have to surround the value with quotation marks. So casting, it's not used a lot, but if you ever do find yourself using it, you're essentially just taking a value and then converting it to a different data type. Like 4.1 is not an integer because it has a decimal point, but if we do convert it to an int, then it's just going to remain the 4. That's just called truncating, because you truncate the rest of the values and you can't use them anymore because you no longer have a double. So operators are used to like perform operations. So you have your basic add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but you also have the modulo, which will give you the remainder. So 7 mod 3 is 1, because 2 times 3 is 6, and 7 minus 6 is 1, so you have a remainder of 1. And you also have assignment operators like equals to, plus equals, minus equals, times equals, modulo equals. This just works as in, you take a value, then you add the assignment operator to it. Like the equal sign, you use that in variables. You say, okay, this variable is equal to this value. Plus equals, you'd use that on like ints and doubles. You'd say, if I do something like variable is equal to 5, then I do variable plus equals 5, then my new value of the variable would be 10, because I'm taking the original value of the variable and adding 5 to it, then reassigning it to the variable. So if I say just variable plus 5, my variable value is still going to be 5. But if I do var plus equals 5, then my new variable value is 10. So comments, very important in Java. These allow you to just comment on your code and let whoever's reading it know. You should always be in the habit of commenting your code, especially in FRC programming where there are a ton of classes and a ton of different files and you need to know what's going on, especially if other people are trying to read your code. So to recap, we have made our first program by printing the text to screen. We use variables and operators to manipulate data, and we want to use comments to make sure people know what our code is doing. Thank you very much for listening.